Welcome to another program, thought-provoking program about the teachings of Noble Drew Ali, Part 2. Prophet Noble Drew Ali was a man of great stature and founded the Moorish Science Temple of America in the year of 1913 AD. Tonight, what we're going to talk about is thought-provoking because we want to talk about how the Prophet talked about and taught about family values. With me this evening is Brother Emmanuel Basswell Bey, Supreme Grand Sheikh of the Moorish Science Temple of America. And I am Sister Diane O'Neill Bey, and I am Supreme Grand Director of Education in the Moorish Science Temple of America. One of the main issues that Prophet Noble Drew Ali had was all about family values. He talked about the family. In his laws, he talks about the duties of different parts of the family, the roles that different family members play. And in the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, he has a chapter devoted to the rearing of children, about how we can raise our children so that they will be competent and efficient industrial members of the society. I know, Brother Basswell Bey, that you and your wife, your beautiful wife, Mary, have raised 4 beautiful daughters that any parent would be proud of. And I know that you raised them also according to the divine principles of Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Science Temple of America, those principles being love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. How do you think that that made you and Mary so successful in raising these girls?
That's a very stretched out question, Sister. First of all, let me thank you for having me here on this program. I love to be on these programs, of course, because it provides us an opportunity, as you said, to highlight the teachings of our divine prophet Noble Drew Ali and his Moorish Science Temple of America. Raising girls is not that easy, but it can be easy if you have divine instructions to raise them by, like you were just saying. And we try to use those divine instructions as presented to us by our prophet Noble Drew Ali and his Moorish Science Temple of America. It's interesting that you would ask that question because it brings to my mind the word edification, you know, edifying. It seems as though in our society, those Moors on the other side of our nation, the edifying of a child is missing. And it simply means instituting moral value in them and through religious and training and teaching as associated with their nationality. You know, when you give a child the information that they need to help them grow like a cedar on a mountaintop, it helps them to compete in the world. Our children, like many Moorish American children, were raised to know what their nationality was, so that was half the problem being solved right there. They knew that they were not Negro, black, colored, or Ethiopian. They knew that their nationality, as well as they know now, is Moorish American. So it gave them equal footing as they were around other people or other children who also had their nationality and proclaimed their nationality, as the German Americans, the Italian Americans, you know, and so forth and so on. And having a knowledge of their nationality and a knowledge of our divine creed of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, you could say the job was almost halfway done. And we have only to thank the Prophet Noble Drew Ali for that information and being in his Moorish Science Temple of America.
That's very interesting because I have met your daughters and I see them all the time, and they are beautiful young women. And your youngest, Fatima, she's a dream.
Thank you.
She is a dream. She's in 8th grade now?
She's in 7th grade now, and she's asking questions beyond the universe now. She thinks that she is the universe.
Well, one of the things that the Prophet teaches us is that the universe is within us and that we are within the universe also. But there are some problems in trying to raise children today because the society around us, there are many, many problems. And one of those problems that we see in today's society is the problem of single parent families. Very often we see that there's only one parent, usually the mother, and I know that it's very difficult to raise a child. The prophet, the Father God Allah, said, not said, but made it possible for two people to have a child, and it stands to reason that two people should raise that child. And how do the instructions of the prophet handle the issues of single parent families?
That is a thought-provoking question as well. Well, our Prophet Noble Drew Ali teaches us to season our children's minds with the maxims of truth. Granted, a two-parent situation is ideal, but it seems as though today in our society we're not have taken advantage of that ideal situation of having two parents raise a child or children. However, from the experience of raising children in the Moorish Science Temple of America, we would like to encourage those single parents to bring their children to the Moorish Science Temple of America, join the Moorish Science Temple of America, and there we can teach them how to be industrious. We can teach them basic virtues, as we call the 12-step ladder. We can teach them obedience, modesty, gratitude, all those things that they need to enhance their character and mold them into a person of character. Now, in teaching those things, as you know, as a qualified teacher yourself, children watch what you do more than they hear what you say.
That's true.
And we always want to make an example, a good example for our children, because they're watching us. In the Moorish Science Temple of America, according to our Prophet Noble Drew Ali, he has created an arena, a learning arena for our children, whether there be a two-parent situation or a single-parent situation, for them to come in and absorb these teachings and let them become a part of every part. Being industrious is a good thing to do for children, especially if there is, unfortunately, one parent in the household. Teach them to be industrious, like Act 7 in our Divine Constitution and Bylaws states, that we must teach our children to be industrious. That means they're always thinking of things to do to add to the pot, to enhance their learning, to work their brain, to bring something back to the house, or to work on bringing something into the house. You know, as you said earlier, raising those children that Mary and I did, we encouraged them to have good careers and have good ambitions. Even if they change 100 times, we change with them every time they change, because as long as it's something positive, and I'm sure you can agree with that, you have to say, well, yeah, that's fine. One week they may want to be a scientist. The next week they may want to be a singer. But we have to encourage them constantly. So those single parents out there that may or may not be having a problem or a situation with their children, we encourage them to bring them to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali's Moorish Science Temple of America. And there we can provide an arena, a real arena, based on facts and not how we feel. Because children today are becoming more intelligent and they are becoming more astute, so to speak. You just can't tell them anything. You can't just say anything to them. They really want to know, you know. And in the Moorish Science Temple of America, as founded by Prophet Noble Drew Ali, we give them the facts, the real deal.
That's a very good answer. I know that when we are in Sunday school, the children ask me some very, very thought-provoking questions. And in the Sunday school, I try to address whatever questions that they can ask me within the bounds of whatever the particular lesson for that day is. I enjoy Sunday school so much because I do get a chance to work with the children, and we do projects in there too, some crafts and some handiwork. But to get back to the subject at hand, I'm a substitute teacher in a South Suburban school district, and as a substitute teacher there, I see a lot that's going on in those schools. And another thing that we have to think about, sometimes we see in the news about children bringing guns and weapons to school, and I have heard children threaten one another. How would Moorish science address this situations?
Oh,
Another easy one, right?
yeah. You know, sister, we can't help but to notice on the news and other forms of media how rampant this thing is amongst not just our children, but children in general across the United States of America in terms of perpetrating violence towards one another and the teachers. It's got to be like a living hell now. It's not like it was when we were in school, you know, a relaxed atmosphere. I once heard Dick Gregory say on the talk show radio that most of this gun-toting and murdering is in other neighborhoods, and they don't have the metal detectors that are presented in our neighborhoods. And if they were to beef up the situation, they would probably put a metal detector at our front door for our children. So when they come out the house, they'd have to pass through that, you know. Well, we're living in that kind of society now. And I truly believe in the teachings of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali that if we start teaching that child while they are young, facts, giving them moral fiber that the Prophet teaches us to give our children, and giving them all the necessary tools that they need to build character, in which we teach in the Moorish Science Temple of America. You see, the thing is that we have to really, for our children, we have to really stress two important questions and answers that's going to help, I truly believe, that's going to help that type of situation of gun-toting and violence is, what is your nationality? Who made you, and what is your nationality? Who made you? If you can get a child, the average child, to understand who made them, we're halfway through. You have God-fearing children, so to speak. You know, most children who have not had an experience with divine truth as the Moorish science that the Prophet Noble Drew Ali presents to us, they can't answer that question. If you ask them who made them, they'll answer most of the time, my mother, my father. They don't see themselves having a divine connection to the one God who we call Allah Almighty. When they see that they have a divine connection to the one God who we call Allah, it helps their spiritual enhancement. It helps them to know that this is something, if it's involved, if gun-toting is involved or firing of a weapon, it helps them to put the brakes on it. Says, oh no, I can't do this, because the Father God, who we call Allah Almighty, would not like this. What is your nationality? Many of our children on the other side of the nation don't know their nationality. Very important question. And we can't say black, because black is not a nationality. Black, according to science, means death. It's an adjective. It has nothing to do with the nationality. We can't say Negro. And we always used to joke about that, if you recall, saying, oh, if you say Negro, that means your knee is growing, you know. And we can't say colored. We can't say Ethiopian. We can't say that. We have to have them say what their nationality is. Our flag, the Moorish flag, which is with the red flag with the 5-pointed green star in the center, and represents our principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, is our flag, as you know. It represents our nationality. And when you ask a child what is their nationality, like we asked our children, Moorish American, it helps. It's part of the edifying of the child, the edification. It helps. You know, granted, we can't be with our children 24/7, but we can rely on the things that we give them, the tools that we give them, so that they can use when they go out into the world, you know. If we can just do that amongst our people, we have took a giant step in alleviating the problem amongst our people, the Moorish Americans, in this dilemma of gun-toting and violence in the school. We can't say postal anymore, can we?
Well, I don't know about postal, but I was watching a television talk show a few days ago, and one of the problems that the mother had with her children and her husband was that whenever she would discipline the children, the husband would hug them and pat them and say everything's going to be all right. One of the things in family issues is consistency within the family. How are we going to raise these children? What are we going to teach them? And people should, before they get married, should discuss these things. And there's an understanding that in many families, the breakdown of the family comes when parents don't discuss how they're going to raise children, what is going to be an appropriate punishment or discipline for their children. Now, I understand that you and Mary do not spank, or did not spank.
Well, our prophet Noble Drew, as you recall, teaches us to use reason. He says, with reason, you can maintain your dominion. So we have to, as we're raising our children, and this is common in any Moorish American household, as we know, that you have to present reason to them. And you know, no one can spank you, whip you, or chastise you as much as you can chastise yourself. When you know you have done something wrong, that's one of the worst whippings that you can get, is when you whip yourself. So what we did was, as most Moorish American families do, we put the blame in their lap. Well, what was your reason for doing this? How can you associate your reason to the teachings of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali? How do you feel about this? You know, in teaching children the holy instructions from the Prophet Noble Drew Ali under his Moorish Science Temple of America, we learned that the being that we have produced, it is our duty to support. And support doesn't mean buying them a pair of Nikes every time they want them, or name brand t-shirts or clothes. Support means moral, spiritual. It means it has a whole gambit, as you know, of support. It means hold them up so they can stand like a cedar on a mountaintop. And what we want to do in the Moorish Science Temple of America, what we are doing, is teaching those fundamental principles to our children so that they can know to love instead of hate. There's too much hate in the world. Everywhere you look around, there's hate. We find easy reasons to hate and less reasons to love. So as the Prophet Noble Drew Ali teaches us in his Moorish Science Temple of America, that we're to teach our children to learn to love instead of hate. When a child sees the parents together as one, they know that if the mother tells the child something and he goes to the father and the father says something different, that's not happening in the Moorish household, because they have to see them as one, because it took two to make them. The Prophet tells us that thy father is like the one who brought you forth, the mother is the one who sustained you, and you see them as a pair all the time in the household when there are two parents in the household. And as we know, that's ideal in the Moorish American family. And the Prophet Noble Drew Ali is giving us those fundamental things that we need to build our family up again, which was torn and ripped apart during the slavery time. He's given us the opportunity to proclaim our nationality and our divine creed and bring back all the family structure that we may have lost during that time. We have proclaimed our nationality as Moorish American Muslims and have said that we will become law-abiding citizens of the United States of America. And by doing such a thing, we're to build our family structure up again, using those fundamental principles, using those 12 virtues, using his law, his laws from the divine constitution and bylaws, and making an example. You know, because it doesn't matter how much you teach them in the Moorish Science Temple of America if they don't actually see you doing it. They have to see you doing it. You know? And I think those are some of the things you teach in your Sunday school.
I try very hard to make sure that the children see what we are doing and that they understand what we're doing. Because you said something earlier that is really key to raising a good, competent, self-sufficient adult in this society, and that is that children see more of what you do than hear in what you say. So it's important, it is truly important for all of us as parents to be the example for our children. We can't tell them that it's wrong to tell a lie and then say, oh, tell Miss Smith I'm not here when Miss Smith comes to the door. We have to make sure that what we do is just as honest and moral as what we expect of them. It's very easy to do one thing or to say one thing and do something else.
Absolutely.
But it is not easy to raise a family when when it becomes a situation of do as I say and not as I do. We bring our children to Sunday school and we teach them. I heard someone say once, don't send your child to Sunday school, bring him to Sunday school or bring her to Sunday school. And we have often heard the phrase that the family that prays together stays together. Truly, the ideal situation, family situation, is a two-parent household.
Yes.
Where one parent, which is traditionally the mother, stays home with the children, teaches them, sends them off to school, prepares meals, and sees to their immediate welfare, while the other parent, traditionally the father, is the wage earner and sees to their physical comfort, that they have a home, that they have the proper clothing, and that they have the proper meals, healthy meals that can be prepared within the home. But many times in this society, we find that the economy is such that very often both parents have to work.
Yes, that's
in
true.
order in order just to make ends meet. And with the high cost of child care, we find many children left to their own devices. How would the prophet's instruction handle that?
You mean the latchkey children?
The latchkey children, right.
You know, that's a really touchy area there, because there's so many methods of controlling that situation from a distance, like pagers, cellular phones, you know, so you can stay in touch with that child as they're during the critical points where they're actually going into the home alone. Again, responsibility is paramount. Teaching our children responsibility is the key. And in the Moorish Science Temple of America, teaching our children responsibility is teaching them to perform along the ways, living the life, so to speak. When you trust your child to perform in a certain way, you have to know that they're going to do just that, you know. Now, I can say that in the Moorish Science Temple of America, under the teachings of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, we teach our children to be responsible, as you know. And in terms of being a latchkey child, we teach them that responsibility that they have is to use that key, go into the home, don't stay on the telephone all day, and don't get on the computer if there's one there, to do their homework, make a little meal for themselves to eat, and relax. And when you come home, it should be just that, you know. There is no right way, I mean 100% proof right way to know that that child is actually performing along the guidelines that we have given them. However, in the Moorish Science Temple of America, as taught by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, we have to learn to trust them, that this is what they're going to do. I know many Moorish American children who are latchkey children, so to speak, and from the teachings of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali that's been instilled in them, we don't have those sort of problems that you have. And I'm not saying that we are 115% correct, but we're 100% correct if that child has absorbed those teachings. Which reminds me of when the Prophet Noble Drew Ali traveled in the South. And he said in his speech, A Divine Warning to the Nations, he says, I've traveled in the South and I've looked at the conditions there, the Jim Crowism, etc., etc. He says, it's a result of our people not living the life. they're not living the life. If they were living the life and being true to the nationality that they proclaim, which would be Moorish American, or the divine creed and principles which they would claim, not probably, but would claim, of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, there would be no need for Jim Crowism and all that sort of thing. Well, the same adds to our children, the same set of rules of conduct. When they're living the life as a Moorish American child, there's really no need to wonder if they're performing along the ways, as they have been given that responsibility to be latchkey children. And this is how the Prophet Noble Drew Ali is doing things. You know, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali is such a great teacher, such a great man.
That he is.
That we know that he passed off the scene in July 20th, 1929. But his teachings today are so real, it's almost as though he was here with us in the flesh. And oftentimes we can repeat some of his words and astound those who are listening. And they say things like, where did you get that from? And if we would really give credit to Prophet Noble Drew Ali, they would know that we got it from him, because it sounds so real today. And the guidelines that he's given us, if we use them, they can be very effective as we're raising our families and as we're bettering ourselves, because we want to be better people too. You know, and you mentioned something earlier about counseling. You know, in the Moorish Science Temple of America, before a couple gets obligated, because we call it obligations, right?